All right, well, good morning/afternoon. I'm excited to be here today, mainly because DevCon has been great, and it's been awesome, and I've really enjoyed all the different talks that have been going on, the unconference yesterday, and as I've been here, there's been a lot of talk about upgrades, a lot of talks about upgrades, a lot of people interested in upgrades. We saw in B-Chan's slides yesterday, like, there's a lot of us that are on 6.2, have been on 6.2, upgrading is relevant. So I have a lot of stuff that I would love to share with you. I submitted 2 talks. One was upgrading to DXP Cloud, and one was upgrading to 7.2, and they said you can do them together. So I have a lot of stuff I would love to share with you. Fortunately, there's been a lot of talks on upgrading, so I don't have to go through all the details again of all the steps, all those things. I will touch on some of them, but if you are interested in all of those details, you should download the slides. I think they're already up on our recap site. You can download those, you can go through them, they've been great sessions. I'll touch on some of them, but what I want to go through is kind of more of the big picture of what the process was like for us, what you could expect if you're planning on migrating to DXP Cloud or any cloud. There's a lot of stuff for any cloud hosting solution, and then also what it looks like to upgrade. We've actually upgraded from 6.2 to 7.1 at the beginning of this year, and then from 7.1 to 7.2 a few months ago, and then to SP1 a few weeks ago. And then as you heard the announcement yesterday, we're trying to constantly be on CE, so we're upgrading a lot. And we've learned a lot of things through the process, and I'm excited to share with you, a lot of what those things look like. So what we're talking about, 1, migrations. Lots of birds, lots of things going on, migrating, lots of services. Also, upgrades. Often feels like that. It feels like you go into this old infrastructure that you have, like Kristen was talking about this morning, and it feels like chaos, but in the end, it's worth it, and you're trying to upgrade. So our migration was to DXP Cloud. We were on internal servers, on-site in LA, on-premise servers. We wanted, for lots of reasons, to move to the cloud, so we moved to DXP Cloud. We also upgraded from 6.2 to 7.2. We did those in different steps and at different times, but I'm going to talk about those things today. A little bit of context so you know what we're talking about. Liferay.com, our web team, so we support marketing and all the things that they want to build. So that's anything from the homepage that you can see on Liferay.com if you go there now, all of our product pages. We have over 200 or so pages. It's nothing huge. It's just our marketing site, training stuff, things like that, but lots of content. Those are part of what we do. There's a lot of landing pages that are built that marketing wants for one-off campaigns, different things. So we build all of those pages. We also build sites for other things. So it could be our Japan site, for example. This is our site for Japan. They wanted a completely different look and feel for their environment or for their industry. So we gave them a sub-site. So we have maybe, I wrote it down, maybe around 30 sub-sites. Those include our event sites. So the DevCon site, we also built and maintain all of those things. So lots of different content, lots of different places. We have to upgrade all of those things or make sure that they're all good when we're upgrading. We also have a lot of applications, so custom portlets, custom things that we build. So that'll include things like our resources, our resource library, things similar to Asset Publisher, but maybe a few more customizations, extensions. We also have a trial form, so you can do a trial in the cloud. And so we had an application for that that's built, that has to be tested, that has to be upgraded. We also have custom control panel apps. So this one, for example, is a short links portlet that we built. So it helps marketers if they want to link from, I want liferay.com/B2B, and I want it to link to the commerce page. They can do that just right here in the UI. We have to make sure all those things, those applications work. And then there's also overrides and extensions, like we want our own custom 404 page. All those things you guys know about, you know how to do in Liferay, just all things to make sure that we upgrade and test as we're going. So that's a little bit of the scope of what it was. Back in 2016, we upgraded to 6.2, so we were on a giant monolith. There was a lot of different things. If you go to liferay.com right now, like customer portal was on one thing. So we had a giant Liferay instance with everything all of our IS teams were working into, and we decided we wanted to split out from that. And when we did that, they were on 6.1, so we went to 6.2. I'm not going to talk about that migration because that was a long time ago, but it was a migration that we did. Then we waited a couple of years. more years than we probably would have wanted. I gave a number of talks in between there, and I was just like, I don't want to talk about how we're still on 6.2 when all these cool things are coming out, because it's hard. It's hard to upgrade, and you guys know that. But I think as we've seen through this conference, and hopefully you'll see through this, it is doable, and there are a lot of tools that can help you do this. And knowing where to start, I wish I would have had some of these talks a year ago, because they would have helped so much to figure out, oh, I can do this, and these are the steps that I need to take. So at the beginning of this year, end of last year, we decided to, since we had the time to upgrade, we wanted to go to DXP Cloud, so move off of our internal infrastructure into the cloud, and we also wanted to upgrade to DXP. So we did both of those at the same time. Depending on who you ask, you should or shouldn't do those things. You should probably do one at a time. It is easier if you can do one at a time, but sometimes you'll never convince the marketing department that you need to do 2 separate upgrades. They'll say, we'll give you 2 months to do this, do everything, or you can't do anything, so you're going to take what you can get. So we went to the cloud and to 7.1. That was the biggest one. That's the one we'll talk about. And then we also did 7.1 to 7.2 in October of this year, which is much smoother, much easier, as you've known, but still an upgrade and still required some work. So the tasks that we involved in doing the upgrade, 3 main basic steps. We've already talked about some of these in a few of the other sessions, but you got to evaluate where you're at, your current stack. For us, I mean, I started as a front-end engineer. The other DevOps guy that we have on our team was also hired as a front-end engineer. And then when we split off from our monolith in 6.1, we were suddenly inherited all these servers. So we had to figure out how to do all of the work for those things. And so we had to evaluate all of our context of where everything is hosted, how these things work. We had IT, and so IT would do a lot of those things. A lot of it was just a black box to us. As we migrated to the cloud, we had to understand those things. And a lot of that is what DXP Cloud helps with. They can do a lot of the wiring together. You still need to know what's going on, but they can do a lot of the wiring for you. So you have to evaluate where you're at, what your infrastructure looks like. Then you need to plan how long will this take, how many resources do we have, what resources do we need. And then you have to justify to marketing, we need 3 months to work on this and not work on your new projects because these are the resources that we have, all of those things. In the end, we were able to do that. We convinced them at the end of last year, and yeah, it was good. Their main benefit from it that they wanted was the modern site building features so that we could give them more autonomy in building pages, which I'll talk about later. But as any good developer knows, we need a dark theme. So when we talk now about our development, I'm going to go through in this dark theme. These are the things that we had to do development-wise through these steps. So DXP Cloud and DXP, I'll talk about both of them. We'll put them side by side. First step for tasks that you need to keep in mind for DXP Cloud, you got to do the environment setup. So you need to get used to what's going on. You got to set everything up. So we have a development environment, a UAT environment, and a production environment. And then they also have a CI, like an infrastructure, and a DR environment. So DXP Cloud has lots of good documentation of how to set those things up, but you have to kind of get a feel for what it looks like to use Docker, to get those things spun up and set up your environment. So playing around with those things, getting a feel for that, and then you have to move to a workspace. So if you're not on a workspace, if you're on 6.2 using the SDK, then moving all of our code into just a different structure is a part of what you need to do. Both those things are not too difficult, but take some time to get used to. For DXP, there's a number of steps there too. So the main thing that we've talked about, if you were in the talk 2 sessions ago about upgrading, a lot of it is the customization, your code, refactoring those to be OSGI or to be WOBs. Whatever it is that you have that needs to be upgraded, you're going to need to upgrade your code, and that's a majority of the work. There's also the database upgrade. So you need to go through and run the database scripts. Liferay has those things built in, but you still need to run them and run through all of the steps and make sure that they're going successfully. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but at a high level, that's what the tasks that are needed for the individual platforms. Outside of those, you're going to also need to test. So you're going to need a plan for testing, what it is, everything that you need to support, all the pages. You can't just update everything and then hope that it's good. You need to make sure that you test it. Unit tests, functional tests, manual tests. We didn't have a very good testing plan going in, so it's a lot of work and a lot of figuring out everything to do. But we're, continuing to improve that as well. And then you need to fix all the bugs that you find, have a process for that, and then fix all those things. Those are pretty straightforward, but helpful to see and to think about from the outset. This is an example of like the first 2 pages of like our testing plan. So trying to figure out who is going where, what users, what kind of things they need to do, the things that we need to manually test, and then figure out what should be unit tests, what should be integration tests, what should be functional tests. List all those things out so you have a high level. If we do all these things, we know that we'll have a stable site and that we can upgrade. And then after that, you need to deploy. So that's the fun part, the stressful part, the part that everyone, hopefully they don't notice, but they'll notice if something goes wrong. So you create a run book. Basically, it's just a list of tasks. We just use an Excel sheet of everything that you need to do the day of, and deploy the code, back up the database, inform marketing. This is, I think, this was our latest run book of all the tasks that we just needed to do in order to make sure on the day that we knew. And writing them out is very helpful because you can dry run them. In the last talk, Christoph was talking about that, and it was very helpful to make sure that you have it all laid out and you can practice it. We even would put in like when it started, like when we started the backup, when it finished, when we started this, when this, so you can get a time frame, and then we can tell marketing on Slack, this is what we're doing. We're going to do the upgrade. We'll probably be done around this time. We had a content freeze, so it'll probably be 2 hours long. Those kind of things, laying it all out, and then you execute it. So you run, you release it, and it should be great, right? Which sounds simple. There's lots of room for lots of work in all of those things. But what I think is most useful as a developer when I go to talks, I just want to see examples of how to do cool things, and also free code and free tips on how to do things. So hopefully some of these things will be useful from our use case of when we were upgrading, things that we ran into, that we discovered, solutions that we found. Not all of them will be applicable to everybody, but they were very helpful for us. So for DXP Cloud, it's built off of Docker. It's built on Kubernetes. We don't have much visibility into the Kubernetes aspect and don't need to know all of the Kubernetes. We know some of the concepts, but we don't have to know all of the commands and how to use those things, which is a nice aspect of DXP Cloud. But it is helpful to get familiar with Docker if you do not know Docker. I love Docker. We started using it before all of this stuff just for local development because it saved us so much time. So getting familiar with Docker will be very helpful in the process for moving to DXP Cloud or any cloud hosting platform. There's a slide for that. Besides Docker, we also have utility services. So in DXP Cloud or whatever container hosting you have, it's helpful to build these services on top of what we have in order to do tasks for you. So this is a diagram of, you may have seen it, I stole some of the icons from just our documentation. But you have your web traffic, and it goes into our Nginx server. This is kind of how the DXP Cloud services are laid out. So we have an Nginx server, just a web server in front of it. And then it goes to Liferay. So we have Liferay DXP going into there. Supporting Liferay DXP, we have Elasticsearch, and you can see the database, and then also a backup restore. Those are all things supported by DXP, things that are useful. You'll have to understand how they all work, but in general, you spin them up, they work, and you can use them. Have the visibility for them. We also created a few extensions to those things to help us. So we have an elk stack that we can feed our logs in. We can feed our logs and different things into Elasticsearch, and then the elk stack or Kibana will display them for us. That helps us to visualize some things, has been useful, especially when you're debugging lots of different stuff. So we created a container for that. We also created a few like dummy containers for testing. So we have a mock server and I think the JS one that we created was a fake HubSpot form so that we could test things on UAT and dev without submitting to our HubSpot CRM or different things like that. So services like that, whatever you need, you can build into the DXP Cloud and send them there. We also have other services like Well, the most useful one, and what all these related to, was the upgrade service. So we created an actual container, a Docker container, that does the database upgrade for you. So it was a combination of 3 different services. Well, actually just 2. The second one being a web dev server. So we basically have a place where we can store files, and then the Liferay upgrade service will look there, and it'll allow you to add a database dump from your current 6.2 instance, and then it'll automatically upgrade it. It'll output the logs for you, and then if it's successful, it'll give you the finished dump. So what that meant is we had our existing Liferay service up. Every night we would get a dump from that. We would send it to the upgrade service, and it would upgrade the database for us. If there are any errors, anything that we needed to solve, then we could resolve those. Ideally, we would do it in the database. Usually, those kind of errors in the upgrade are corrupt data in the document library or in articles, a lot of things like that in your database that need to be cleaned up. And so you can clean those things up and do that iteratively. So setting up those kind of services in Docker makes that very useful. And instead of you having to, some of your projects are really big and it takes hours to run the upgrade. So you don't want to leave your machine overnight running these 8-hour upgrades and then they air out and then you have to start over in the morning. Using the cloud tools that you have, you can really avoid some of those things. So all of that is in the DXP Cloud stack. That's what that last box means. Next, automated deploys. Those have also been super helpful. Relatively common. The whole CI/CD is nothing new, but it's very helpful. And whatever cloud platform you're using, having that being automated saves you a lot of time. Because in upgrades, there's a lot of things changing. In your normal deployment, there's a lot of things changing. So using the Jenkins server that we have all of our branches. It watches our repo. We create a new branch, and then it actually will build everything for us. And then based on the branch that it is, it'll deploy it to the environment that we want. So that gives us everything that we merge to master is automatically within 10 minutes going to be live on our dev environment. And then when we're ready to do a UAT branch, we can just cut it at the spot that we want for the content freeze. It'll deploy it to UAT. We test it out. If we need to patch it, all of it's automated. So all I have to do is run a few command line things to merge all of the code. It all does all the work for me. It saves me a lot of time over. So those kind of things make your upgrades, setting them up in the beginning makes your upgrades faster and helpful. And then lastly, one little tip that we found helpful is in the actual go live is using the disaster recovery environment. So we had a different environment for Liferay that's spun up ours was in London, our disaster recovery. So that's for if something goes wrong, we can switch over to it, but we can actually use it for upgrades because you're going to need some downtime usually to do a database upgrade. And so what we can do is just point the DNS to our disaster recovery zone. And we tell marketing, for us, it works because we don't have users besides marketing adding data. So we can just say there's a content freeze here. We point it to the DR. We do the upgrade in place on the database, the one that we've been testing over and over and over again, and we're certain that it's good. We can do that on production. When it's all good, we can test it, do all those things, we can switch it back. Then our end users don't even know it's different. Most of the company, if we wouldn't have posted in Slack, wouldn't have known anything changed, except for maybe the marketers that see the control panel is different. But that's great. When people are not complaining, that's a good thing in our line of work. We all know that. So this is just a picture of DXP Cloud. This is our DR environment. You can see it's in London. For DXP. So there's lots of things we can do here. A lot of the tips, I think, are figuring out how to upgrade your code. So one thing that we found useful, we created a module, we call it the DDM importer. It basically helps us to import our templates and structures from web content and ADTs. We can commit them into our Git repo, and they automatically get deployed every deploy. So this helps us because, especially for an upgrade, is sometimes you need to change your templates and structures, but you don't know how to do that because as soon as you do the database upgrade, all of the old ones won't work, and then you need to switch all of them out, copy-paste them really quickly. this happens because we have some complex web content structures. So if yours are pretty normal, then they'll probably be fine. But what we did, and this actually helps for a lot of history and versioning as well, is we have them all stored in Git and then in a module that automatically deploys. So as we were upgrading, we can commit all of those things, and then we can use those templates to update it automatically when we upgrade. That was helpful for us. Also saved us a lot of manual clicking and things for the actual day of. This is an example of the structure. So you can see we have a module called DDM importer, and it has a few different modules in it. But basically, we save all of our FTL files, all of the structure files in there. We can commit them, and then they get deployed whenever things are deployed. Next helpful thing that we found, and a lot of the cleanup for the database upgrade, is just doing your cleanup. So doing cleanup of your database, which is important. As we've already talked about, as you're doing the upgrade, when things air out, it's usually corrupt or old data. For us, it might have been old web team people changing things in the database that they shouldn't have, or weird bugs in 6.0 from when we upgraded old content and different things. There's always little things here or there that get messy. So if those things fail, we fix them in the database now, clean things out. It's also very helpful to purge your database of what you can. So remove pages, remove content that you're not using if you can. Also, you can remove old versions to shrink the size of your database, because you can have an article with 100 versions, and all you really care about is the latest. So you could purge all of those other old versions, and that's going to make your upgrade times faster. Also, a lot of the pains that happen in maybe old versions of different things. So cleaning up your code is very helpful. This is a SQL script that we ran recently to figure out all of the old and unused content on our site. So we're trying to figure out web content that's not been displayed, so that we can evaluate if we can just delete it, those kind of things. Along with that, you can also use, you can do some code cleanup, and you can do this ahead of time. So instead of having to do everything all at once in your upgrade, you can go through and remove some of the deprecated things that you're using from from version to version. That's helpful. It was also very helpful for us to use target platform. This has been mentioned in a few talks, but it's basically this idea for OSGI, you don't have to tell them the exact version that you're on. You can say, I want to use the target platform that Liferay is using, and then you can clean up a lot of your dependencies in your OSGI modules, and it allows you to upgrade more easily because you don't have to change every version of every dependency in every module, which would be very time-consuming. So that saved us a lot of time using that. Yeah, and then just going through, a lot of times our logs get kind of crazy and we just ignore warnings, but they're very helpful sometimes. So you should go through and anything that says it's deprecated, try to fix it now so that when you upgrade, it doesn't just disappear and it's no longer there. You can clean those things up and be proactive. And the great part of that is it just makes the upgrade process easier, and you can actually do it now. It's not like you have 100 steps to run on the day of the upgrade. You're doing this iteratively. Great, and the last one is the question of WAB or OSGIFI. It depends who you talk to of which is better. Some people will say, do as little new things as you can at once. So you should just WAB all of your stuff and then OSGIFI after you go live. For us, we didn't have too many modules, and we were figuring out how to do the OSGI stuff, and we had the resources to do that, so we wanted to actually rewrite a lot of the things, so we actually made them OSGI modules, but it's definitely valid depending on how old. We might have actually tried a WAB on one of our portlets that was really old and that we just needed to support. We weren't going to ever develop on again. So there are use cases for that, but figuring out, which modules you need to rewrite in OSGI, which you can just keep as WARs, that is a helpful question. So, and there's a feature, this is just the portal setting for turning on that WAB, so you can literally just drop a WAR into your deploy, and DXP handles it. So, the results, what this turned out as. So, for DXP Cloud, it meant some of the benefits we got were speed. So one of them, we had old hardware in our internal servers. Things like switches would go out and things would go down. We always were asking IT. Performance wasn't the best. It's located in LA. There's fires in LA. If something burned down, we would be out of luck. So we got better hardware moving to DXP. The cloud, we don't even have to worry about the hardware, which is nice. And it was considerably faster. Network speeds, all of those things. The speed is better. This is some of, we had speed curve going through, and some of the things, you can see the green in the middle, just saying our load times went down on all fronts, which was beneficial and great. It's a little hard to say exactly what everything is because we did DXP and DXP Cloud at the same time, so there could be benefits or drawbacks for the metrics here. But overall, this migration and upgrade from 6.2 to 7.1 helped us a lot with that and DXP Cloud. Not only was there speed benefits, but there's also a lot of ease of development, ease of knowing where everything is. We don't have to work with IT as much. The flip side of that is we have to understand a little bit more, but when you understand it once and have it in DXP Cloud, then it works and you can use that. You also get the simplified deployment process. So like I was talking about with earlier with the CI/CD, like all I have to do is merge code to master. It's automatically deployed. Before, we would release every maybe two or 3 weeks, and it would take a couple of days to get everything prepped, make sure everything's good, then go into every server and manually deploy it from the Git repo. We had all these things set up, but it would just take time. Now it takes one command, and then I can merge it. Everything will happen itself. So it's much easier to do that. Not only ease in deployment, but also ease in knowing where everything is. We had a lot of different repos with different configurations and settings with different people with access. And the workspace, the Liferay workspace, you can see everything that you need right there. You can see all of your DXP Cloud containers are in one folder. I'll have show you those a little bit later, but you can see your modules, your themes, your configs, everything is all in one spot. So you know this is everything that we have on our site, and it's very clear and easier to understand. And also, just for local dev, our site was notorious, especially when we were on 6.1, it could take like a week or two for a new dev to figure out how to start up our website on their local machine. And so it was like, do we even want to add a new resource? Because it's going to take so much time to get that thing set up. Now we can run one command, and it will spin everything up, and it's actually way more accurate to what is actually live. Before it was just getting Liferay in the database, but now we have the Nginx server running, we have all of our other services running, all those things are running locally on Docker, and it works and it's super easy. So this is, which video is this? Oh, this is how easy it is. So I can run one Gradle wrapper, we made an init environment command, and then bring it up, and then it literally, we created a few custom scripts that will basically, it'll download the database, like a clean database that we have from production, and then it will, we even had an upgrade script for that when we were doing the upgrade, that it would upgrade for it. But right now, it just downloads the database for you, and then it spins up all your containers, downloads all of them, spins them up, and then it'll start it up, and it'll show you the logs. We can do that in one command. It'd probably, from scratch, take maybe depending on your computer, 8 or 10 minutes. And then you have Liferay.com running locally completely, which is pretty amazing compared to how long it takes before. Not only ease, but you have control. Like I was saying before, you have control over the IT infrastructure. We don't have to wait for IT to be in or to respond to messages when we have an issue. We have visibility. For a long time, it was always a black box of, hey, can we update these redirects? And okay, they're updated, and well, they're not working. And then, well, we can't see those repos, all those things. Everything is in one spot, and we can know exactly what's going on. So while there's a little more needing to be engaged with it, we have the control and the visibility, which is ultimately important because IT doesn't get in trouble if your site goes down. You get in trouble if your site goes down. So you have the power and control to do that. This is an example of what our workspace looks like. So we have our modules all there. We have our properties. Everything is in one spot, which is very nice for seeing and explaining to people and everybody being able to have access to what they need to. Other than that, we also have risk management. So speaking of the disaster recovery, if something were to go down, we're able to have that here. That's helpful for reassuring and also helpful functionally for doing things like upgrades. I'm almost out of time, so I have to fly through some of these. But this this is what DXP Cloud looks like. You can see, if you want to see Zeno's talk earlier, we've been demoing those things before, or I can show you after if you want. For DXP, some of the benefits, at a high level, the platform, you get the benefits of the platform. So not only do you get new features, like we'll show a few of them, but you also get the benefits of being able to simplify some of your code. So your code can be, you could have written a portlet, like we have a few portlets that right now in DXP in 7.2, we don't even need to write the portlets, we can just use out-of-box features. Things like the data engine, the app builder, all these cool things that Liferay is building, you don't even need to write code for them, you can just do them in Liferay. So there's all sorts of new ways to do those things. The front end, microservices like Chema and them were talking about this morning, those things you can use and it can simplify your customized code, so you can ideally use a lot less of that. You also get the benefits of modularity. I personally, there's a little bit of a learning curve for OSGI, but I appreciate the benefits of those the modularity and the clarity, and to be able to go into the Go shell and look at all of the things that are running and have the split of the services. All of those things are actually very nice to develop with, and I think a big benefit of upgrading to 7.2. And then you also get the features. So this is one of the main reasons that we upgraded and needed those things. Things like Analytics Cloud, you can get all of the data coming in for that and use those things for your business solutions. We've liked the new page nav, so they they split out how navigation menus work and made it simpler. So now instead of us having to hard code into the theme, kind of loop through our pages, you're able to do those things. All those things are beneficial. Also, I would have loved to shown more about components, but modern site building, there's been demos for those things as well. You can get the slides for that. We've created landing pages for our marketers so they can build pages on their own. All that stuff has been super helpful and beneficial, and we're using those things. The new customer success pages that in the keynote, they mentioned that you can use for DXP Cloud training. Those were all built on fragments, modern site building. We built them. It's actually like 1 or 2 fragments. We handed it to the training team. They built 30 pages off of it. We didn't have to do that. Normally we would. So there's a lot of really cool features, things that you can use for those. If you have questions about them, want more specifics, want to see any of the code, just come find me. I'll be out at the booth. But yeah, upgrading is possible, and it is good. It's work, but it's definitely worth it. So thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ryan.
Appreciate it.